Alright, what's poppin', people? We're back. I'm recording this at 8 a.m., so my bad if I sound very unenergetic. I'll try to perk up throughout it. But we're gonna go over today. Nice little week 7 of NUPL tournament game between Hold Confirmed and GXC. And this is one of my favorite examples of how just wonderful matchups can be in tournaments. Just absolutely criminal matchup that GXC has this game. So let's explain why. There's a Tyrantrum against a team without a ground type. That's already kind of check one. And although when you're talking about ground types, how many of them actually do check Tyrantrum reliably, especially if it's choice banned? Not many. It's what, Quagsire and Mudsdale really? And even those two can kind of get beaten down depending on the team they're around, you know. If a Tyrantrum player, for example, wants to get really greedy and throw off an Outrage, once they have enough chip on them, yeah, you might just 2-hit KO. And of course, you'll do that from a higher threshold than Head Smash because of, well, you know, ground doesn't resist Outrage. And so, it's not like there's a lot of great team building options to where you can look at your team from a defensive angle and be like, okay, yeah, no, I have great Tyrantrum switches. Those aren't really Pokemon that we have a lot of. And so if you limit yourself to that sort of team building mentality, you might find it hard to build a team that you're like really happy with. So there's Pokemon 1. Now Pokemon 2 is this Escavalier. If we're looking at Hoen's team, you'll notice an immediate issue of, wait, how does he actually beat an Escavalier? You know, this Pokemon is insanely bulky. I do want to, you know, quick disclaimer, this game was played when Dragalge was still allowed, but Escavalier just, there's not a Pokemon on this team that you look at and you're like, yeah, this is gonna beat down Escavalier. There's just not. It does end up being revealed to be Mystical Fire Diancie, but that is it on Hoen's team, so it's gonna be interesting to see him try to play this one out. And now before we get into it, of course, a reminder to please like and subscribe if you've been enjoying the content. We're actually getting close to the end of the 50-day upload marathon, which is really weird to say because it feels like I've been doing this for 5 years at this point. So I don't know how some people manage to do this just for literally multiple years in a row. It's wild to me. Y'all keep going though, you're doing great. Anyhow, let's get into this. So we're gonna see Guzzlord versus Escavalier here. Obviously GXC looked at preview and he said, huh, I don't see a fire type or a Pokemon that on its most common set is gonna have a fire move. So I am just going to lead with this mod, and unfortunately does get the Guzzlord lead. Of course he switches there because this could be specs with Fire Blast, could be even choice banded with Heat Crash. So no reason to risk losing that Pokemon immediately. He's gonna switch Muds. Hoen's gonna go Garb, but we're gonna see Hoenn try to predict the Stealth Rock a couple turns. It doesn't go too well. It ends up with a very weak Garbodor. And GXC now gets Stealth Rock up, and Garbodor is now essentially KO'd because Hoenn has no way to remove hazards from his side of the field. So, not off to the best of starts. Not off to the best of starts. Garbodor was even kind of like, I don't want to say it was a checked as Cavalier, but I guess it could have been like corrosive gas, right? And it at least could maybe force Rocky Helmet damage. You know, not the best Mon to lose necessarily. Anyhow, we're gonna see a trading of Knock into EQ and then just a Dragon Tail. Hoenn is right now putting it overtime with this Guzzlord for sure. He's weakened the Mudsdale a whole bunch, crippled it for the whole game by getting rid of his lefties, and now he's also going to do the same to Escavalier. This is what he needs to do if he wants any sort of chance at winning this game. He needs to try to get this Mon nice and weakened so that, well, it doesn't get to keep coming in. Get that Mon weak, keep your own hazards up, try to get as much passive damage as you can on it. We're going to have seen during that dialogue, Zatu tries to block Stealth Rock, it fails to. Now I remember this turn getting talked about a little bit in post. Hoenn wants to take the Stealth Rock trade. He knows that more than likely a Scald or even a Wish is coming out. He could have tried to look for a Wish Pass to actually no, you would have looked for a Wish Pass to anything, never mind. I was gonna say to Mudsdale, but if this is offensive Diancie, odds are Mudsdale isn't gonna tank that hit after spikes damage. So he's just scalding because Heliolisk, if that comes in, you're protect. So you always get to scout out the Heliolisk. It doesn't really matter what it goes for. And just based on Hoenn's team, I think you could pretty easily justify to yourself, hey, this is probably Scarflisk. So Vapo can easily scout out that thing's Thunderbolt, even if you don't get to use Protect on that turn because you just used it. And his crit is going to suck too because it burns. And there's going to be a sequence later on where, as a result of this crit burn, with the, emphasis on the burn, but I guess the crit matters too, Hoenn's not going to be able to stall for lefties ever. And we're going to see here too, just a great example of, Choice Scarf Heliolisk trying to beat a standard Vaporeon. It just doesn't happen. You're just not strong enough. Vaporeon has a little bit of specially defensive investment, so it just actually eats those Thunderbolts up. Now we're going to get the Motum in on the Verzion. Now, Hoenn's Verzion does admittedly have a pretty decent matchup this game. If it ever gets a Sword Stance off, because GXE's Revenge Killer is a Rotom, you're in a pretty decent spot, because he doesn't have an easy way of dealing with it. And with the Stealth Rocket Spikes up even, you're going to see Escavalier's in CC range, Vaporeon just doesn't do anything to you, Zatu's going to get beaten down by Stone Edge. It's not a terrible angle for Hoenn to be at. So, that's something to keep an eye on. We're going to see the Togedemaru come out against the Vaporeon. As I just did say, GX to throw off a Wish here. Because, his only real way to pivot into this is with Rotom and hope it's always on a non-CC turn. So he gets it again here. And we're actually going to see him make probably the best play he had, which is just dump the trick now, give the Verzion a Scarf, that way you can actually switch Pokemon and do it. Verzion, without being able to Sword Stance, a lot less of an annoying Pokemon to try to beat than a Verzion that can Sword Stance. We're actually going to see here too, though, it's a big defog Zatu, and now Garbodor can technically switch back in. So we're going to now see, does Hoenn ever get that Garbodor in? The answer is no. So Garbodor now stays dead, except it can't spike back up. So that kind of sucks for Hoenn. I personally think what I would have done on that play that Mud Set Rocks, I probably always just try to go Garbodor. It's easy to say that in hindsight, obviously, but what I'm looking at here is a game where I need every sort of advantage I can get. And if that means doubling in a Garbodor to then, like, greedily gunk shot a Zatu coming in, because I do think GXC will always from there go Zatu on the Garbodor. He might also just stay into trade, but I think he personally goes Zot. Point, of course, of this being, I think you do have to make some aggressive plays. And try to get Garbodor in on the turn that Mudsdale is going to go for Stealth Rock. I think that's kind of the greedy play you need to make. Anyhow, we're going to see a funny type of why I hate using Defensive Guzzlord. Why am I losing to a Zatu? The world may never know. It's not like it's a losing sequence in total. Obviously, Roost has fewer power points than Knockoff. You win this eventually. The Zatu has to switch here, as we see. It's just like, wow. Feels real bad to try to win that. And now we're going to see why this Escavalier is a huge problem. It gets up this SD, and Hoenn immediately just has to be like, alright, let me sack, and now go DNC. And this is where we're going to see... this is where we're going to also see why it was so important that not only was there the crit, but the burn. So, Zatu is going to try to Roost Stall. The Zatu's only attack seems to end up being Foul Play, which makes sense. Defog Zatu doesn't have a lot of leverage with what you put in its move slots, and as a result of him only having Foul Play, obviously Diancie can't actually beat it. And at this point, even Diancie's like not incredible or anything, right? This Vaporeon still has a lot of health, so it's not like you're gonna see this Diancie just absolutely destroy it. And as I look at it, to the damage doing to Zatu, this isn't even like offensive DNC, right? This is just defensive DNC that does have Mystical Fire. So the damage it's actually putting out is quite lackluster. And Zatu's able to sit in front of it for as long as it wants to, without really any repercussions, even though it can't actually touch it. But as you see here, we now have this DNC in range. I don't know if GXC calced it or if he was just waiting for a turn he felt was best for him to finally go for foul play. But now that this DNC is in range of Stealth Rock, it can't ever come in again. And we're also finally about to see Tyrantrum time. Because like we said at preview, what is Hoenn's counterplay to this Pokemon? It's really basically just limited to not letting it in too frequently. I feel like this is the sort of team where if a Tyrantrum ever goes for Dragon Dance versus you, and you do not have Diancie alive and well to, you know, take that sort of panic check route, because you will live a head smash, you just won't be happy about it. But if you're ever in that scenario, yeah, you're kind of screwed. And of course here too now, Escavalier realizing that this Togedemaru cannot touch it whatsoever, just gonna Swords Dance up, freely take it out. And he is still going to play around this potentially being Fire Blast. There's really no reason for him not to. But seeing the Dragon Tail there, now you feel comfortable enough saying, okay, you are just knockoff Dragon Tail, maybe Toxic and it's some other coverage move, but that coverage move doesn't seem to be a fire move. Anyhow, the Dragon Tail spam finally puts him in a losing scenario where Tyrantrum gets brought out. I don't think he had any sort of win con. Also, this is why Vaporeon is such a hard mod for me to really like, because you need Life Orb and Sword Stance, I feel, to consistently be a threat offensively. Its coverage is really good, but man, it's, what is it, base 90 attack? That sucks. And we're gonna see a fail to KO the Tyrantrum. I don't think it mattered even if it did, because Vaporeon would be dead to Stealth Rock, and then you're still playing this game of Heliolisk versus a Mudsdale and an Escavalier. There is no move to lock into that makes you happy. And so we're just going to slowly now see GXC finish this game off with some nice little Escavalier gaming. After a miss, of course. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this. This was definitely a very slanted game in GXC's favor just because of how good the combination of Tyrantrum Escavalier was. I mean, you're just looking at two Pokemon that, yeah, anytime they get in, they're looking like they could put in a lot of work. We did see Hoenn make some good adjustments to his build to accommodate for that. I think especially the Diancie set is a nice one. And of course even Garbodor. I mean, like, look, this Mon, at the very least, it could have pivoted in on Tyrantrum and gotten some chip. So it's not like it's the worst thing. So long as you still can map out game plans in your mind of how to play around these awkward matchups, I think it's still okay to feel confident about a team. So I mean, look, what was Hoenn's game plan versus the Tyrantrum? Try to limit the switches it gets as much as possible. Keep Diancie at full if possible. Keyword being if, of course. Which is a little weird because he did sack it to a Scald from Vaporeon. But I mean, at that point he was on the back foot anyway, so you kind of have to make that sort of aggressive play, right? Garbodor, you know, you can always try to sack that to get damage. Scout if it's choice locked, if it's Dragon Dance, I mean, you just kind of hold that. That's sort of like the mindset I think you have to go into some games with, because not every team you build is going to be able to cover the entire metagame format. Sometimes there just are threats you lose to. And it's not necessarily because you have a bad team, you've just got a team that kind of had to take an L somewhere. But I hope y'all enjoyed this coverage. I also have to record something else later today, because this video is going up today. So that's fun. But I'll catch y'all later. Peace.